Actually, the IMF, I guess, condition is to not give subsidies. The government actually did not increase taxes. The government actually increased prices to stop hoarding. I think that's fine. Uh, my objection to the increase is that the government should have actually increased our petroleum levy or petroleum tax and should have pocketed the profit itself, about 19 billion every week, as opposed to just giving this 19 billion gift or windfall profit to the oil companies. The IMF really had no role to play in this. It is the only drop in the ocean, to be very honest with you. I don't think this is the first drop in the ocean. Uh, And it is indeed what you say it is, a drop in the ocean. What I would have liked to have seen is Shahbaz Sharif saying that we will cut the petroleum allowance, fuel allowance for senior bureaucrats who get from between 200 to up to 800 liters a month by 10%. Even though the prices have increased by over 20%, we will only cut by 10%, and that should be permanent. We will also require ministers who get unlimited fuel to pay 10% of their own fuel, which is not a whole lot. Uh, and Shivas Saab saying that we will now ensure that no unnecessary foreign trips happen by ministers or governors or chief ministers and prime ministers. So I would like to ask how many unnecessary trips happened during the last 2 years or the last 4 years of Shehbaz Sharif Saab. And why were they unnecessary? Why were the unnecessary trips happening then? We weren't a rich country even before this petroleum crisis. But anyway, and then the one austerity measure that I actually disagree with completely is the closing of schools. In 2025, Punjab had only 135 school days. The Lahore High Court wants the school days to be 220. There's a committee in Punjab that suggests that it should be 190. So if you start from even 200, that means that you've lost 65 days of school year. And again, you're now in 2026, again, closing schools from now to the end of March. You give school breaks during Basant, you give school breaks during smog, you give school breaks, every so often. Do we know how much fuel savings there is from school closing? Because most of the schools are in neighborhoods, and most of our Pakistani children walk to school. Or sometimes their parents drop them in motorbikes, or sometimes they, even middle class kids actually go in Suzuki's, 20 kids. Uh, so it's not clear to me that this is any fuel saving, and I don't understand why we take education so lightly when 60, 70% of our 10-year-olds are not able to read a simple story in Urdu. So I didn't like the education part, closing of school parts. And the second thing is that, they've talked about half of the government officials not coming to work and working from home, and the government office is only opening 4 days a week. Uh, what about Nadra and passport office and things like that, where you need to get certificates or passports or ID cards? Would that be more trouble for the common citizens? Should they have been exempted? So I think there are some revisions required. But I am glad that Shahbaz Saab is cut 25% of parliamentarian salary for just 2 months. Recently, they gave 25 crore rupees, 43 billion in total, to all government associated parliamentarians. I would have liked to have seen their salaries going 100%, but I would have liked to seen that 25 crore rupees per MN is saved. I also would have liked to have seen some cuts in PSDP and provincial PSDPs and federal PSDPs and savings transferred to the Federal Finance Ministry. Pakistan doesn't really have any fiscal cushion to be able to give subsidies on fuel. That's just very, very clear. We are a poor country, which badly run poor country with no fiscal space. The government right now is not giving subsidies. The government right now is charging 125 rupees per liter of petrol. Okay. So every morning when a motorcyclist goes and gets 1 liter of petrol in his tank, he has to pay 125 rupees to the government of Pakistan in taxes. And at the same time, if you have 1,000 acres of arable land, agricultural land, you don't pay any taxes. If you have large shops in big commercial areas of urban areas, cities like Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad, you pay no tax. So the government has to understand that it cannot just continue to exempt certain select sectors of the economy from taxation, especially agriculture, especially real estate, especially retail and wholesale, only because they're either big donors of your company, of your party, or big donors or big influential people. And you cannot just continue taxing the very poor. Or the people should not believe it, and the people don't believe it. As far as the international fuel prices are concerned, one hopes that the war stops as soon as possible, not just for the sake of our cheaper oil, but actually for the sake of all the lives being lost in Middle East and Iran, especially. But and hopefully, when the war stops, in few months, not right away, but in a few months, the prices will come back to normality, or to close to, let's say $60-$70 before war and war talk. But will they make Pakistanis poorer? Of course, they have already made Pakistani poorer. Will inflation in Pakistan have increased? Of course, the inflation is already increasing. Bus fares have gone up, train fares have gone up, transport charges have gone up. So your fruits and vegetables will become more expensive. Your taxi rides have become more expensive. So, I mean, there is going to be a cascade of, inflation, across the economy. Would that be would the previous equilibrium of prices will come back? Probably not. Hopefully, some improvement will happen, but normally they're sticky one way, and once they go up, it's very difficult to bring them down. Okay, so there are different ways to measure poverty. World Bank has it differently. The government of Pakistan recently issued a report which said that 29.7% of Pakistani households are under, or Pakistani people are in poverty, and they measure poverty at 8,500 rupees per month per person, which means that if there's a person who's making 40,000 rupees a month, 45,000 rupees a month, and he has a family of five, including himself, three kids and a wife, that family is not considered poor. Okay, at 45,000 rupees. Although the reality, of course, is starkly different. But that's government statistics. Let's not argue with that. According to that, it's 29.7%. Now, when your real income is going down, which it has over the last 10 years, from 2014 to 2024, when your poverty is going up, food prices are going up, and stuff like that, it's probably the case that poverty will continue to rise. We've seen a rise of 6% over the last 6 years, 7% over the last 6 years. We're probably going to increase it by percent and a half, every year. And I think because there is nothing that has changed. I mean, there is still unemployment. There is still more people trying to get into the job market, than there are, jobs available. So I don't really see anything changing in Pakistan. There are no fundamental reforms. There's no reform of the governing structure. And there are no jobs available. So I think poverty will only increase. It's not clear to me how much, but I would say that 1% a year is not a very outlandish number. I don't really think that the government had any choice but to raise prices. My issue really is because we have no fiscal buffers. My issue already only is that the government should have taken this money in its own treasury as opposed to giving it to oil companies. This 55 rupee increase helps the government by nothing. I mean, there is no increased revenue to the government. This is just increased revenue to oil companies, and that just makes no sense. I mean, this is basically a straight transfer to, oil companies, PSO and Shell and Atak Petroleum. The government really should have just increased taxes. That would have stopped the hoarding. And there is no reason why they just gave this gift. And their formula in Pakistan is 15 days, that we change price every 15 days. If they wanted to go to a 7-day period, they could have, but they should have done it at the end of the 15-day period. And right now, they should have just raised levy for 1 week, which, again, like I said, either they were incompetent or worse. So nobody even believed, even in the beginning, that we will have a 4% growth. International institutions also thought that it would be around 3%. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think the growth will be more than 2.5%, which is what we've had in the last few years, which means that on a per capita GDP basis, per capita basis, our growth will be negative, like it has in the last 6 years. And Pakistanis again this year will become poorer. Not one problem has been fixed. This is the tragedy of Pakistan, especially of the last 4 years of Shehbaz Sharif Saab's government, that in the last 2 years, especially, ever since the last IMF deal in 2023, the world has been kind to Pakistan. The international oil prices were down, commodity prices were down, whether it's wheat, cotton, fertilizer, oil, LNG, all prices have come down. And Pakistan really had an international space and a fiscal space to fix some of the basic problems, afflicting our governance. But Shehbaz Saab wasted all this 2.5 years, knowing full well that we really don't have that much time. We are actually going behind the rest of the world every year. And not just the rest of the world, we are going behind our own self. So the world is actually moving forward, we are actually going backward. So the gap between us and India, gap between us and Bangladesh, gap between us and Sri Lanka is actually only increasing. And our human development indices now are not even comparable to the better countries in sub-Saharan Africa, but the average of sub-Saharan Africa. And in terms of infant mortality and neonatal mortality, we are actually one of the worst compared even to sub-Saharan Africa. I think there is a lack of will, because nothing happens if you don't have the will. I think there's a lack of vision. There's a competence problem also. And there is also the moral legitimacy that this government doesn't have, because it's not popular or popularly elected. So there's a whole bunch of issues. But I think that will and vision are probably very, very important, because at the same time that they don't have popular support, they actually have a lot of support from powerful quarters in Pakistan. And so they really could have. I mean, if you can move amendments overnight, constitution amendments overnight, surely you can do some things for the people as well. Oh yes, and more so. It's not just the oil that has become expensive. I mean, the LNG is, we're indexed to oil, that has become expensive, and LNG is not now available. Plus, all the plastics come from hydrocarbons, so those things have become expensive. So, I mean, our import bill will go up substantially. Our remittances might go down because of the crisis in the Middle East. So this is not good for our economy at all. And if this war, God forbid, prolongs for a month or so, it would be havoc for not just Pakistan, but for every poor country, but especially for Pakistan. There is not going to be any post-IMF recovery. Pakistan, no matter what happens to the oil prices, Pakistan will go into another IMF program after this program ends. We will probably, depending on when the elections are, we'll probably stay out of the IMF for a year. The government will spend a lot of money, give a lot of money to its MNAs and MPAs and favorite lobbies and all that stuff. And then after the next election, the first thing the finance minister will we take to a necessary foreign trip and go to the IMF. I don't think there should be a charter of the economy, because I mean political parties have different ideologies. People's Party supposedly left of center, PMLN, at least Nawaz Sharif is right of center, Shehbaz Sharif, God knows where. Some people have more, they want to empower the state more, like Shehbaz Sharif Saab does. Some people want to empower private sector more, like Nawaz Sharif did. So it's not clear to me that there should be a charter of economy, or even for that matter, actually, come to think of it, there should not even be a charter of democracy, but there is a charter called Constitution of Pakistan. As long as we have the right constitution in Pakistan and we all obey that constitution in spirit, letter and spirit, there would be no need for any charter of economy or charter on religion or charter on politics or charter on democracy. Everything should be spelled out in our constitution. There are lots of countries in the world who have democracy without a charter of democracy. There are lots of countries in the world who have pretty good economy without a charter of economy. We just need better leadership and better structure of governance. No, I don't see that happening. Uh, the tax regime that exists in Pakistan The oil and gas prices in Pakistan, the business opportunities in business Pakistan are so limited because of the tax and this thing, that it's not something that people will want to invest in Pakistan. The currency here fluctuates, the currency depreciates in, fits, and so there's a lot of uncertainty around Pakistan's economy. That doesn't end because of what happens in Dubai and UAE and all that stuff. And if God forbid Dubai and UAE and Saudi Arabia and all those countries stop working as well as they are, the problem in Pakistan is not that we will get some more money out of, we will get some money, let's say, back to Pakistan, but the problem is that our remittances will, decrease. So it is in Pakistan's interest that those Middle Eastern countries, continue to perform well because we get a lot of remittances out of this. And before Pakistanis who take money out of Dubai bring it back to Pakistan, would they not consider investing in Hong Kong? Would they not consider investing in Singapore? Would they not consider, maybe investing in Spain or Portugal, like a lot of supposedly bureaucrats do, or England, like a lot of politicians do, or France, like a lot of politicians do? Well, I memean, under the Uran Pakistan platform or rubric that SNBI has come up with, Pakistan's exports are supposed to double, but the fact is that Pakistan's exports are today less than what they were 4 years ago when Shahbaz Saab took over. Pakistan's exports are less this year than last year. So, you can come up with number of E's. It doesn't really, do anything. Okay, so if you really want a long-term solution to our economy is actually only educating our people. But short term is that, look, we have bad policies, we have basis which are making our outcomes bad. But why do we have bad policies? Because the incentives that policymakers have are perverse. And they have perverse incentives because of the bad structure of our governance. Unless and until we change the governance structure of Pakistan, open Pakistani politics, devolve to local level, bring in voucher schools, bring in private-public partnership in schools, improve the health outcomes in Pakistan, improve law and order in Pakistan, reduce taxation in Pakistan, reduce the footprint of the government of Pakistan. You can change Shahbaz Sharif, bring in Imran Khan back. You can change Imran Khan and bring in Asif Zardari back. We've seen all these faces over the last 10, 15 years. And we've not seen growth in any of these periods. So what we really need to do is to not change personalities. Fine, if you are a pro Imran, you think Imran is, the Messiah or the savior. If you're pro Nawaz Sharif, you think he still believes in democracy and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is that we've seen all of them. We've seen that they only believe in democracy when they're out of power. And we've seen that none of them really know how to take Pakistan out because of the structural reasons that structural problems that Pakistan has.